Welcome the Spicy Lady. The way someone spends their time when no one is watching often tells you more than words ever could. Sigma females are fascinating because their hobbies are rarely random. Each activity, no matter how quiet or ordinary it seems, often carries deeper meaning. These are hobbies that help them understand themselves, sharpen their minds, and grow stronger in ways most people never notice. From exploring new places alone to quietly mastering skills, every action reflects intention and curiosity. Many of these hobbies go beyond entertainment. They are tools for reflection, emotional growth, and independence. A long walk alone can untangle thoughts. Late night thinking can uncover truths that daylight hides. And journaling can turn chaos into clarity. Even activities that appear simple, like arranging a space or creating privately, often serve to strengthen internal focus and mental resilience. Sigma females are also drawn to learning that most people overlook. Observing human behavior, studying hidden patterns in society, or mastering a new skill quietly becomes a way to navigate life with subtle power and insight. These hobbies allow her to grow without the noise of expectation, applause, or social approval. In this video, we're going to explore 12 hobbies that reveal exactly how Sigma females think, grow, and maintain their unique inner strength. Each one shows a different layer of independence, intelligence, and quiet wisdom. Stick with me until the end because some of these hobbies may surprise you and even inspire new ways to approach your own life. Let's get started. Spicy Lady. Number 1. Learning skills that increase independence. She is drawn to hobbies that reduce dependence. Editing, design, investing, writing, coding, language learning, even repairing small things herself. For many Sigma females, learning a new skill is rarely just about passing time. It usually has a deeper reason behind it. If she chooses to spend weeks learning how to edit videos, understand design, write better, study coding, manage money, or even fix a small problem at home, it is often because she values one thing deeply: the ability to rely less on other people. What makes this different is the mindset behind it. While some people learn a skill because it is trending or because everyone else is doing it, she often asks herself a simple question. If life becomes difficult tomorrow, what should I know how to do for myself? That question quietly shapes many of her interests. For example, if her laptop develops a minor issue, she may first search for the cause, watch tutorials, and try to understand it before rushing to hand it over to someone else. Not because she believes she knows everything, but because figuring things out gives her confidence. The same thing happens with money. Instead of depending only on advice from others, she may spend time learning how savings work, how investments grow, and why certain financial habits protect freedom later in life. Even something like learning a new language can mean more than communication. It can be her way of opening doors without waiting for anyone to guide her. Writing can become another quiet form of strength because it teaches her how to think clearly and express ideas without confusion. What many people do not notice is that every new skill she gains slowly changes how she sees herself. A person becomes mentally stronger when they realize they can solve more problems than they once thought possible. To her, independence is not about proving anything. It is about creating a life where panic becomes less necessary because capability keeps increasing. That is why what looks like an ordinary hobby often becomes private power over time. Number 2. Revisiting old memories to understand growth. She often mentally compares who she was with who she has become, not out of regret, but measurement. For many Sigma females, looking back at old memories is not an emotional habit done just to feel nostalgic. It is often a quiet way of measuring growth. She may remember an old conversation, a mistake she made years ago, a friendship that ended, or a moment when she stayed silent even though she had a lot to say. But instead of replaying it to suffer again, she studies it almost like reading an old chapter of her own life. What matters to her is the difference between who she was then and who she is now. A memory becomes useful when it shows how much has changed. She may remember a time when one harsh opinion ruined her whole day, and then notice that today the same kind of opinion no longer controls her emotions. That small comparison tells her something important. Strength did not arrive suddenly. It was built quietly through experience. Sometimes this reflection happens in ordinary moments. A song plays, and suddenly she remembers a difficult season of life. A place she visits reminds her of a version of herself that thought very differently. Even an old message or photo can make her pause and realize how much her mindset has matured. For example, she may think about how she once tried too hard to explain herself to people who had already decided not to understand her. Now she knows that not every misunderstanding deserves energy. That lesson becomes more valuable than the memory itself. This habit also helps her notice patterns. She can identify what kind of people drained her, what decisions delayed her peace, and what moments actually pushed her forward. Instead of pretending the past never happened, she uses it as quiet evidence that growth is possible. To many people, remembering looks like dwelling. To her, it is more like checking old footprints and realizing the distance already covered. Sometimes the clearest proof of growth is seeing that old situations no longer have the same power over your mind. Number 3. Solo travel or quiet exploration. Even short visits to unfamiliar places matter to her because new environments reset her thinking and help her observe life without interruption. For many Sigma females, solo travel is not mainly about posting pictures or proving how adventurous they are. Very often it is about stepping away from familiar noise so the mind can breathe again. Even a short trip to a nearby town, a quiet cafe in another part of the city, or a peaceful afternoon in an unfamiliar place can do something powerful. It interrupts routine. And sometimes that is exactly what the mind needs. A new environment has a strange way of clearing mental clutter. When she is in a different place, even briefly, her attention sharpens. She notices details she would normally ignore, the way strangers talk, how people move without knowing her story, how life continues outside her usual circle. That distance often gives her perspective. For example, someone may spend weeks overthinking one difficult conversation, but after sitting alone by a beach, walking through a museum, or even taking a quiet bus ride through a place she has never explored before, the issue suddenly feels smaller. Not because the problem disappeared, but because the mind finally had room to look at it differently. What makes quiet exploration important to her is that nobody is shaping the experience for her. She chooses where to stop, what to notice, when to sit, and when to move. That freedom allows honest thinking. Sometimes she learns more about herself during one quiet afternoon alone than during many crowded social outings. Even small discoveries matter. A hidden bookstore, a quiet street, a local market, or a simple park bench can become meaningful because unfamiliar places often create unexpected thoughts. That there's also wisdom in seeing life outside your usual surroundings. It reminds her that there are many ways people live, solve problems, and carry their burdens. To others, it may look simple, but for her, quiet exploration is often a reset. Sometimes the clearest thinking happens when nobody knows where you are and nothing around you is demanding explanation. Number 4. Creating something without showing anyone. Writing, sketching, designing, recording ideas. Many Sigma females create privately because not everything meaningful needs public validation. For many Sigma females, creating something in private is one of the most personal forms of peace. It may be writing pages no one will read, sketching ideas that never leave a notebook, designing something on a laptop late at night, or recording thoughts in a voice note only for herself. What matters is not whether anyone sees it. What matters is what the process does inside her mind. Some people create mainly to share. She often creates to understand herself better. A blank page can become a place where thoughts finally make sense. A quiet sketch can express what ordinary conversation cannot explain. Even unfinished ideas can feel valuable because they hold pieces of truth that do not always fit into daily conversation. For example, after a difficult day, she may sit down and write a few honest paragraphs about something that annoyed her, confused her, or taught her something. Nobody may ever read it. Yet that simple act can clear emotional noise better than talking for an hour. In that moment, the writing is not performance, it is clarity. The same happens with visual creativity. She may design something beautiful, save it, and never post it anywhere. Not because she doubts it, but because not every meaningful thing needs an audience. Sometimes creating privately protects the purity of the idea before outside opinions touch it. There is also quiet confidence in building something without needing immediate applause. It teaches patience. It reminds her that value does not disappear just because nobody is watching. Many people underestimate private creativity because they measure worth by attention. But some of the most honest ideas are born where there is no pressure to impress anyone. Over time, this habit becomes more than a hobby. It becomes a way of keeping a part of life untouched by noise. In a world where almost everything is shared instantly, choosing to create something only for yourself can feel rare and deeply grounding. Sometimes the most meaningful things are the ones that exist quietly and still change you completely. Number 5. Researching topics most people never think about: psychology, hidden power structures, philosophy, emotional survival, social patterns. She often goes deep into subjects others only mention casually. For many Sigma females, curiosity rarely stays on the surface. When a topic catches her attention, she often wants to know what sits underneath it. What caused it, who benefits from it, and why people rarely talk about the deeper layer. That is why she often ends up researching subjects most people mention casually and then move on from. A simple conversation about human behavior can lead her into hours of reading about psychology, emotional triggers, and why people repeat patterns they claim they want to escape. She may hear someone say people never change, and instead of accepting that statement, she starts asking what conditions actually make change difficult. She wants the reason behind the reason. The same thing happens with power. If she notices a pattern in workplaces, friendships, or social groups, she often becomes interested in hidden influence. Why does one person speak little yet shape every decision? Why do some people control attention without obvious effort? These questions lead her into subjects most people do not stop to examine. Philosophy also attracts her because it gives language to thoughts many people feel but cannot explain. A simple question like, why does peace often arrive after disappointment, can open a long line of reflection. For example, while others may watch a disagreement and focus only on who sounded right, she may think about what fear, pride, or insecurity was operating underneath both sides. That deeper reading makes ordinary situations more interesting to her than they appear to others. She is also drawn to emotional survival, not in a dramatic way, but in a practical one. She wants to understand why certain experiences harden people, why some become wiser after pain while others become bitter. To many people, this kind of research looks unnecessary. To her, it is how life becomes clearer. The more she understands hidden patterns, the less easily she is confused by appearances. Sometimes what looks like overthinking is simply a refusal to accept shallow explanations. Number 6. Minimalist organization: cleaning, arranging, removing clutter. Sometimes she organizes space because disorder feels mentally invasive. For many Sigma females, organizing a space is rarely just about making a room look neat. It often begins with something deeper. When the environment feels crowded, scattered, or full of things that no longer serve a purpose, the mind can start to feel crowded too. That is why cleaning, arranging, and removing clutter often become more than ordinary chores. It becomes a quiet way of restoring inner balance. At a messy table, an overloaded wardrobe, or a room filled with items that have no real purpose can create a kind of silent pressure. Even when nobody talks about it, the mind keeps registering unfinished signals everywhere. A chair covered with clothes, random papers lying around, or drawers packed with things never used can slowly create mental fatigue. She notices that more than most people do. For example, after a stressful week, she may suddenly decide to clear a shelf, fold clothes properly, delete unnecessary files from her phone, or rearrange a corner of her room. To someone else, it may look like simple cleaning, but for her, it often feels like clearing static from the mind. As the space becomes lighter, thinking often becomes lighter too. Minimalist organization also teaches a quiet kind of honesty. It asks simple questions. Why am I keeping this? Does this still serve me? Is this useful, or am I holding it out of habit? Sometimes those questions reach beyond objects and quietly influence how she thinks about routines, commitments, and even relationships. There is also comfort in knowing where things belong. A well-arranged space reduces small daily frustrations. When everything has a place, less energy is wasted searching, correcting, or reacting. What makes this habit powerful is that it creates visible order in a world that often feels mentally noisy. It gives her a sense of control without needing anything dramatic. To many people, removing clutter is ordinary. To her, it is often a reset. Sometimes peace begins with something as simple as making the room reflect the clarity she wants in her thoughts. Number 7. Long walks with no need for company, not because she is lonely, but because movement helps her process everything she refuses to explain aloud. For many Sigma females, a long walk is not just exercise. It is often one of the few moments when the mind becomes honest without interruption. Walking alone gives thoughts space to settle naturally. What felt tangled indoors often begins to separate clearly once the body starts moving and the outside world becomes quieter. This is why she may leave the house without a big reason, take a familiar road, or choose a quiet street simply to think. It is not always because something is wrong. Sometimes it is because too many small things have gathered in the mind and need sorting. A conversation from earlier in the day, a decision she has not made yet, an emotion she has not fully named, all of it begins to make more sense when her feet are moving. There is something about steady movement that loosens mental pressure. When sitting still, thoughts can feel heavy. During a walk, they often become easier to examine. A problem that seemed overwhelming indoors may suddenly look manageable after 20 minutes outside. For example, she may start a walk feeling irritated by something someone said, but halfway through she realizes the real issue is not the comment itself, but what it reminded her of. That small discovery often comes because the mind is no longer crowded by screens, conversations, or expectations. The surroundings also help. Passing ordinary people, hearing distant traffic, noticing trees, shops, or changing light can quietly remind her that life is wider than whatever is bothering her at the moment. What many people misunderstand is that solitude during a walk is not always withdrawal. It is often a form of mental maintenance. Some thoughts do not become clear in conversation because they are not ready for words yet. By the time she returns, she may not have solved everything, but something inside usually feels lighter. The walk creates distance from noise and gives her access to thoughts that would have remained hidden in a crowded room. Sometimes clarity does not arrive through discussion. Sometimes it arrives one quiet step at a time. Number 8. Night thinking late hours often attract her because the world becomes quieter and thoughts become more honest. For many Sigma females, nighttime has a completely different atmosphere from the rest of the day. When the noise fades, messages slow down, and most people are no longer demanding attention, the mind often becomes clearer. That is why late hours can feel strangely comforting. It is one of the few times when thoughts arrive without being interrupted by conversations, obligations, or unnecessary noise. During the day, many thoughts stay buried under routine. There are tasks to complete, people to respond to, and small distractions everywhere. But at night, when everything becomes still, those same thoughts begin to rise with more honesty. Questions that were ignored in daylight suddenly return. Feelings that were pushed aside become easier to recognize. This is why she may sit quietly at night, look out of a window, listen to soft music, or simply stay awake longer than planned, because her mind is finally sorting things properly. It is not always sadness, and it is not always overthinking. Sometimes it is the only part of the day that feels mentally spacious enough for real reflection. For example, she may remember a conversation from earlier and realize that what bothered her was not the words themselves, but the hidden meaning behind them. Or she may suddenly understand why a certain decision has felt uncomfortable all week. That kind of clarity often arrives when the world is no longer competing for attention. Night also creates emotional honesty because there is less pressure to perform mentally. No one is expecting quick answers. No one is asking for immediate reactions. That quiet allows deeper thoughts to surface naturally. Sometimes she uses those late hours to write ideas, plan quietly, read, or simply sit with thoughts she could not examine properly during the day. Even small observations can feel important in that silence. To many people, staying awake late looks like a habit. To her, it often feels like access to a version of thinking that daytime rarely allows. Some truths only become clear when the world softens and nothing is asking to be answered immediately. Number 9. Fitness with psychological meaning: Pilates, strength training, stretching, solitary workouts. often less about appearance and more about mental control and internal order. For many Sigma females, fitness is never just about looking a certain way. It often begins with something deeper, control. Every movement, every set, every stretch becomes a quiet way of mastering the body, and through it, the mind. She understands that strength is not only physical, it is mental. Fitness becomes a practice of focus, patience, and discipline. For example, a Pilates session may seem gentle on the surface, but it teaches awareness of every muscle, every breath, and every subtle imbalance. That awareness often translates into sharper mental clarity. Strength training is another form of training the mind. Lifting weights alone is not only about building muscle. It is about pushing through discomfort, facing limits, and quietly proving to herself that she can endure more than she once thought possible. Even stretching or yoga can become a tool for emotional regulation. Holding a difficult pose requires attention to discomfort without reacting impulsively. That lesson often transfers to daily life, helping her stay calm in moments when others would panic or overreact. Solitary workouts are especially meaningful. Without mirrors of approval or social competition, the exercise becomes an internal dialogue. She measures progress by consistency, by subtle improvements, and by how her body and mind respond to effort. Over time, these small victories build a quiet confidence that cannot be seen externally, but is felt deeply within. Fitness also becomes a form of emotional release. Anger, frustration, stress, or confusion can be processed through movement rather than words. It allows her to leave mental clutter behind while creating a sense of order in the body. To many, exercise is just physical. To her, it is a tool for control, focus, and mental resilience. Every session becomes a chance to strengthen not just her body, but the quiet inner structure that supports everything she does. Number 10. Rearranging her inner world through journaling. She may not tell people what she feels, but she often writes what she cannot safely say. Her notebook becomes a private courtroom where thoughts are examined honestly. For many Sigma females, journaling is far more than a way to record the day. It is a private practice of self-discovery and mental clarity. When thoughts feel too tangled to speak, too raw to share, or too unconventional to explain, she turns to her notebook. The act of writing becomes a way to explore feelings, decisions, and ideas with total honesty. Nothing needs to be censored, and no one is there to judge. Her journal often functions like a private courtroom. Every thought, every emotion, every lingering question is examined carefully. She may write about an argument from the day, not just what was said, but why it affected her, what it revealed about herself, and what lessons she can take from it. Sometimes she writes in dialogue form, imagining the conversation as if she was speaking to herself, dissecting her choices with precision. This habit also gives her a sense of control over mental chaos. Thoughts that might swirl endlessly in the mind find order on paper. Frustration, disappointment, joy, or fear all take shape, allowing her to process them fully. Even decisions that feel confusing become clearer when she can see them laid out in writing step by step. For example, she might reflect on a friendship that has shifted and write down every emotion it stirred. By the end, she often finds a pattern, a lesson, or an insight she could not have reached by thinking alone. Journaling transforms abstract feelings into concrete understanding. Over time, this private habit strengthens her self-awareness, sharpens emotional intelligence, and builds a mental clarity that is difficult to shake. To many, a notebook is just paper, but to her it is a sanctuary where she can speak truth without speaking a word. Writing becomes the bridge between thought and insight, chaos and order. Number 11. Protecting a secret personal project. There is often one ambition she shares with almost nobody because she prefers unfinished dreams hidden from external noise. For many Sigma females, some ambitions are sacred. There's often a project, idea, or dream she shares with almost no one. Not because she doubts herself, but because she understands the value of keeping certain things private until they are ready to exist in the world. External opinions, even well-meaning advice, can dilute focus or create pressure that clouds clarity. Protecting a secret personal project becomes a form of quiet strategy. This could be a business she is quietly building, a piece of writing, an invention, or even a personal skill she is mastering. She may spend months learning, testing, and improving without telling anyone. By keeping it hidden, she creates space to experiment freely, make mistakes, and refine her work without judgment. The secrecy often gives her more courage to take risks that others might avoid if they feared external scrutiny. For example, she might be writing a book that challenges conventional thinking. Every chapter is carefully crafted, rewritten, and analyzed. She may never show a draft to friends or family, not because she fears failure, but because the work is still growing, still forming. When the project is finally ready, it emerges fully shaped, stronger than if it had been exposed too early. Protecting a secret personal project also teaches patience. It reminds her that not everything needs immediate recognition or approval. Some ideas are meant to incubate quietly until the timing is right. Over time, this habit strengthens her focus and self-reliance. Many. Keeping a project hidden may seem like isolation. To her, it is empowerment. It is a way of honoring the process over the applause, depth over noise, and readiness over impatience. Some of the most extraordinary accomplishments are born behind closed doors in silence, where ambition can grow without interruption. Number 12. Reading human behavior more than books. A Sigma female often treats everyday life like live research. For many Sigma females, understanding people comes naturally, almost like a skill she has been quietly developing for years. She often treats everyday life as if it were a live experiment, observing interactions, reactions, and patterns with sharp attention. While others may only hear words, she listens to tone, watches micro-expressions, and notices gestures that reveal more than what is being said. A pause in conversation, a shift in posture, or a forced smile can tell her volumes about intent, emotion, or hidden agendas. This ability is not about judgment. It is about awareness. She does not need to comment on what she notices. Instead, she stores the observations quietly, connecting dots that most people never even realize exist. For example, she might see someone offering help but notice a subtle hesitation in their eyes. That small detail can reveal whether the offer is sincere or motivated by ego, expectation, or control. Every social encounter becomes a chance to learn, understand, and predict human behavior. Over time, this practice sharpens intuition and emotional intelligence in ways that formal education or books cannot replicate. Even casual observations, like how coworkers react under pressure or how strangers respond to small kindnesses, become data points that help her navigate life with clarity and confidence. What makes this fascinating is that her focus is rarely obvious. People may assume she is quiet or detached, but internally she is actively analyzing motives, patterns, and truths. This ability allows her to make decisions, avoid unnecessary drama, and understand the complexity of human interaction on a level most people never notice. For her, life itself becomes a classroom, and people the most intricate lessons. By observing with care, she gains insight into what drives behavior, giving her a subtle but profound advantage in understanding the world around her. What we do in private often shapes who we become in public. Sigma females approach life differently, and their hobbies reveal the depth of that difference. Every activity they choose is rarely random. It is often a reflection of their inner world, a tool to sharpen the mind, manage emotions, or grow independence. From learning skills that increase self-reliance to exploring quiet corners of the world alone, each hobby serves a purpose that goes beyond surface-level entertainment. They create privately, write honestly, organize spaces meticulously, and study life deeply. Even activities that seem simple, like taking long walks or reflecting at night, carry profound personal meaning. Each moment becomes an opportunity to understand themselves better, to measure growth, and to gain clarity in a world that rarely stops talking. Observing people, analyzing behavior, or pursuing interests that others overlook teaches them subtle truths about life, trust, and human nature. What makes these hobbies extraordinary is their intentionality. They are not about showing off or fitting in. They are about building internal strength, mental resilience, and emotional intelligence. Over time, the accumulation of small deliberate actions transforms how she navigates challenges, relationships, and ambitions. Understanding these hobbies gives insight into the mind of a Sigma female. It shows that independence, Wisdom and quiet power are often cultivated through consistent private effort rather than external recognition. These hobbies are more than pastimes. They are a roadmap for personal growth, mental clarity, and emotional mastery. In the end, what a Sigma female chooses to do when no one is watching often matters more than anything she does in the spotlight. These hobbies quietly define her strength, insight, and depth. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.